तो वो उसको फोर्स फीड करते हैं महीनों तक, सालों तक, ताकि लिवर इतना बड़ा हो जाए, और फिर वो एंड में लिवर को एक्सट्रैक्ट करके वो डेलिकेसी निकालते हैं। उसका रिजल्ट ये होता है कि वो डक जो है इतना खा खा के डिजीज्ड हो जाती है और मर जाती है, दे डाई, राइट? सो नाउ द एनालॉजी हियर इज द सेम विद स्टार्टअप्स. इफ यू फोर्स फीड कैपिटल.
Hi Amit, how are you?
I'm good, Paritosh. Thank you for having me. Quite looking
No,
forward
pleasure
to
is
record. Yeah.
definitely pleasure is all mine. Thank you for taking out time and talking to us. I wanted to mention one thing, Amit. आप अपनी जो LinkedIn प्रोफाइल है ना, उसकी डीपी से थोड़े से अलग दिखते हैं.
No, that's an old, as in it is during COVID times.
हाँ.
About, I think, maybe 3 years old or something, and it has become kind of a trademark picture. I try to change it, and then people tell me, "Arey, ye kaun aa gaya?" So I don't change it now. I've kept that like that. But yeah, but good to hear. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. So right, Amit. Firstly, I wanted to start off with understanding what is Factorial, and you are partner in Factorial. How
Yeah.
long has it been? आपने कब start किया Factorial? Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for asking, Paritosh. So I'm a partner director at Factorial. We are, for the lack of a better word, we are a boutique management consulting firm, which is doing a host of things, which includes advisory on specific challenges faced by startups and companies. And I use the word companies because essentially we deal with growth stage startups, which have become companies by now. Then we do deep consulting for the same very companies. When I say deep consulting, it means we advise them on any and every business function, 360 degree, be it sales, marketing, finance, anything and everything, right? On a day-to-day basis. We don't work as strategy consultants, but we get our hands dirty, right, in terms of working as an extension of the company itself. And then, of course, we do investment banking and fundraising and funding for these very companies, right? So it's a very differentiated model, more like a Y Combinator growth model, which we entail. And we are very boutique in our operations, maximum 8 to 10 companies at any given point. And the vision, I mean, I must tell you, our vision is to grow 100 companies in the next 5 years to at least a bare minimum of 100 crore top line revenue each, which is a very conservative figure. If they grow beyond that, it's okay. So yeah, that's our vision and mandate for now. And we are a team of 3 partners headquartered in Hyderabad, and then a small team of analysts on the financial and tech side.
Right. That's great. So, I mean, when we typically talk about growth stage companies, आप क्या define कर सकते हैं कि growth stage companies हम किसको बोलेंगे? Where do
So
they
you
lie
see,
in the spectrum?
yeah. So see, every startup has, I have broadly, and how we work is different stages. One is a 0 to 1 stage, when they have an idea, they're ideating and they build the product or the service, right? Then they have the 1 to 5 stage, which means that they go to market. They're trying to find PMF, paying customers, again, across products and services. And so that's an early stage, right? Then they have a 5 to 10 stage, where they've established PMF, they have paying customers, they start raising venture capital, right? Seed rounds, pre-series rounds, and all that. And then after that 5 to 10, you have a 10 to 100 stage, right, which is a hyper growth stage. So for me, growth stage starts between the 5 to 10 journey of the startup, right, where they have figured out everything, and now they need to concentrate on building the organization, transcending from a startup to a company, right? They will start putting in processes and systems in place, start hiring senior level people on CXO, vice president level for different functions. And the founder essentially needs to come out of day to day, right? They need to delegate and all. And then you have the growth. So essentially, when we deal with companies, they come to us at that 5 to 10 stage, and we help them go on the journey of the 10 to 100 hyper growth stage with whatever is required apart from funding also. But we believe that only funding does not help, right? Funding is a byproduct of what they do. Funding should not be required, especially venture capital, for sustaining the company. It should be required for the growth of the company, for whatever growth they need internally on capex level, or for marketing. And the marketing spends also should be very minimal at that stage, because the company would have already figured out an organic way of marketing, network effects would be strong, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Right. And I'll come back to that later, talking about difference between growth and sustainability later. But since we have naturally progressed, अब हम startups की बात कर ही रहे, we have talked
Hmm.
about 0 to 1 and 1 to 5, 5 to 10. Uh, so how would you put Indian startup ecosystem's current scenario? Where would you put it in terms like abhi, is it still at nascent stage? Have we moved on from the nascency, adolescence? कहाँ पर आप रखेंगे इसको?
So I go with a bit of history in 60 seconds. See, I mean,
Sure.
we are almost 14, 15-year-old startup ecosystem. 2010, 2011, everybody means all the big ones now, Flipkart,
Hmm.
Ola, and all that. 2014, 15 was the time when they started getting hyper funded, big VC started looking in. And essentially, I don't blame anybody, but essentially we didn't see much innovation coming at that point. Most of them were copy paste aggregator models taken from the Silicon Valley or China. Flipkart was a copy of Amazon, Ola was a copy of Uber, and so on and so forth, Oyo. So aggregate, and it was done by the venture capitalists looking at India as a large last frontier market, and they wanted to copy the Silicon Valley models in India, which unfortunately, and of course, they were majorly funded, so they deep discounted, burnt a lot of capital, and mistakes were made, right? And then, of course, I mean, there were periods where consolidation happened and all, but by and large, that was the nascent stage where a lot of ideas were being put into place but didn't work out. A lot of capital has been burnt. Nobody is happy. Neither of the foreign VCs are happy. Most of them have taken exits at a loss now and gone out of the system, right? But now, currently, now in COVID, this whole activity actually was on hyper stage, where a lot of industries were again funded. Some sectors like edutech, health tech, e-commerce, given the explosive growth which happened, everybody was forced to be online. So they thought online is the only way to go and will stay on. Unfortunately, that did not happen. And we came out of COVID, and then we've had something called a funding winter, which is still in place, right? Now, I look at it as a good thing that this correction was necessary, right? Much needed. Otherwise, a lot of mistakes would have been made also. And now we are at a stage which is a very good stage. People think it is not good. Hyper funding should keep happening. And we are never going to go back to that stage of hyper funding and all. This is the new normal. Good, stable companies have no dearth of funding or investors. When I say stable companies, the ones who are building from the ground up, our portfolio, for example, has 7, 8 companies, all good founders who have built up 7, 8 years, not burnt capital. Now they are growing, and there is inbound investor interest, no lower valuations also. So we are at an inflection point currently, and generally, right? Innovation is coming in. A lot of deep tech is coming in. For the first time in 30, 40 years, we as an Indian market are not going to be lagging behind. We are neck to neck on the innovation cycle, whether it is generative AI, semiconductor manufacturing, and so on and so forth, right? If you look back in history, 70s, 80s, we missed the boat. 2000s, we missed the boat. We were always playing catch up with Silicon Valley and then China. But now it is not happening. I attend a lot of conferences, meetings, meeting a lot of investors and startups. So this, the taps when they have run dry in funding is a good thing, actually, not a bad thing at all. It has forced people to think out of the box, innovate. No need to copy paste, and there are enough examples of uh, good companies like a Zoho or a Zerodha, where they have proven that by going global or bootstrapping, I mean, I'm not advocating only bootstrap. Venture capital is very necessary. So I think we are a good stage next 5, 10 years, and generally also the India growth story is very strong in fundamental infrastructure sectors and all. So I think next 5 to 10 years we will have a nascent plus stage where again we cannot be a Silicon Valley in 5 years also, uh, but we don't need to catch up to them, right? We are right there. Most of the big tech companies in the world, be it a Google, Microsoft, OpenAI, Elon Musk's companies, uh, Apple, right? They are all coming to India, looking at India, making huge investments. India is the only country which witnessed double-digit growth for Apple, right? In manufacturing and in sales also. right? It is their biggest manufacturing market as of now for iPhones and all their other products, and it will continue to be so. So I think the India growth story is on a very good trajectory fundamentally, and startups are a big part of it currently. Also, I would like to add, due to a stable government, there are a lot of initiatives done by the government. Since I work with a lot of incubators, accelerators, and IITs, their innovation hubs. So I know funding is not a problem at an early stage. You can easily get funding of 50 lakhs, 1 crore by these institutions given by the government. There is a 3,600 crore budget, and another, I think, 40-50,000 crore in Startup India, which is all there to be availed by startups. So the whole ecosystem has come together, from academia to accelerators, incubators, then venture capitalists, angel funds, and then corporate ecosystem. Corporates are tying up with startups, not
Yes.
necessarily acquiring them, but taking advantage of their
Strategy.
strategy or the product services they somehow integrate. HCL is a good example of that. From their university, which is Shiv Nadar University, they have an incubator,
Hmm.
and they take a lot of companies into HCL corporate, doing testing of the product services. So all in all, I think a good period we are in. We've gone through the nascent trial, testing, failure stage in the last 14 years.
Right. That's great. So, I mean, like you mentioned, and to summarize that, आप ये कह रहे हैं कि फंडिंग का कोई इशू नहीं है, पैसे के इशू नहीं है. We have enough dry
हाँ,
powder to go ahead. The issue lied. I mean, the funding winter was then not an issue of the lack of money. It was something else.
सी फंडिंग इशू विंटर जो हुआ है वो इसीलिए हुआ है बिकॉज ऑफ लॉट ऑफ हाइपर एक्टिविटी, लॉट ऑफ
Hmm.
फोमो इन्वेस्टिंग, फियर ऑफ मिसिंग आउट
Hmm.
इन्वेस्टिंग,
Yeah.
जहां सबने कुछ सेक्टर्स में पैसा डाला विदाउट थिंकिंग कि कोविड जो था वो एक ब्लैक स्वॉन इवेंट था, राइट? इट कम्स वंस इन अ सेंचुरी एंड इट विल बी ओवर, राइट? बट अ लॉट ऑफ मनी वेंट इनटू मेनी सेक्टर्स, एंड जब हम कोविड से बाहर आए नेचुरली स्लो डाउन आ गया, राइट? बट नाउ जो सिचुएशन है वो फंडिंग इज नॉट एन इशू फॉर गुड फंडामेंटल कंपनीज. आजकल आप देखेंगे there is a talk of profitability everywhere. Many companies are reporting profits, both listed, जितनी भी 10-12 startups listed है. Zomato, for example, is a flag bearer. Last 4 quarters they've made profits, right? So everybody is now, VCs included, right? They know they have made mistakes. They have not gotten the exits that they desired, and people are course correcting. So it's very easy to blame, but see, nobody knows how markets will react, right? Now they know that India is a unique place. We are a unique country, that we are heterogeneous in the sense कि हम बहुत different है. Each state is like a country, right? तो अब अमेरिका को देखा जाए तो it's one country, one population, one language, mostly, right?
Mostly.
China is the same, one language, one country. We are different, so you cannot copy paste China or US models in India, right? हम लोग यूनिक हैं, हेट्रोजिनस हैं, तो इसीलिए the strategy has to be unique, right? Many founders, they think they are catering to a भारत, वो जो सब 3-4 साल से पिच डेक पर दिखते हैं, we are catering to भारत, right? अब वो भारत, हाँ, जो भारत स्टोरी है वो बहुत बड़ी है, right? You cannot expect a farmer sitting deep in a village in Maharashtra or Bihar just because उसके पास मोबाइल फोन है, इंटरनेट कनेक्शन है. You cannot expect him to be shopping online on e-commerce, right? हमारे एक तो ये सारे स्टार्टअप्स जो है ई-कॉमर्स कॉन्सेंट्रेटेड ही हैं हमेशा, बट इट इज चेंजिंग नाउ. दैट प्रॉब्लम सॉल्यूशन माइंडसेट से लोग कर रहे हैं. डीप टेक इज नॉट ई-कॉमर्स, डीप टेक इज मच डीपर, and so I think a lot of people have realized that R&D बहुत हो रही है. We have one particular portfolio company of ours, Indra Water, which works on wastewater treatment, patented solution at an IIT Bombay. They were incubated, and they have just now raised $4 million from a Swiss VC, the first investment, the Swiss VC. So it is not a consumer product, it is an industrial product, जहां वो वेस्ट वाटर और सीवेज वाटर को ट्रीट कर रहे हैं, और ट्रीट करने के बाद 95% इज फिट फॉर रीयूज, राइट? सो आप देखिए कितनी बड़ी प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व कर रहे हैं. दे हैव बीन अवॉर्डेड टॉप 10 स्टार्टअप बाय वर्ल्ड इकोनॉमिक फोरम एंड यूनाइटेड नेशंस in the world, globally top 10 in the world. But it is not a hockey stick growth company. कि वो 10 billion 20 billion पहुंच जाएंगे पेपर पे, right? So it's deep tech innovation, right?
We have opened a lot of doors over here. मेरे को समझ नहीं आ रहा कि कौन सा दरवाजा में घुसूं, but still, again, you have mentioned R&D. एक point आपने mention किया R&D. I would like to act as a devil's advocate over here. Are you confident enough कि R&D उतनी अच्छे से हो रही है, product innovation इतने अच्छे से हो रहा है? Are we still not just copy pasting things from the West? Do you really think that's happening?
No. We are not copy pasting on R&D. Yes, we copy paste in implementation and finding markets then. But R&D, we have the brightest mind, we have the brightest institutes amongst the best in the world, whether it is the IITs, triple IITs, ये पूरा ecosystem है हमारे पास. Indian Institute of Science. On the management side, we have our IIMs, which are like Navratnas, right? And the IITs also, right? पहले सिर्फ legacy IITs थे, Bombay, Delhi, Madras, Kharagpur, Kanpur, right? Now there are 21, 22 IIT hubs. Each of them has a technology innovation hub and R&D facility, and everybody works together. So any R&D coming from student community goes into the incubator. It is funded, tried, and tested. What we are lacking after that is how are those ideas, only barely 2% of those ideas come into commercial stage, right? और किसी ने अच्छा प्रोडक्ट बना लिया लैब में एट एन आईआईटी, ट्रिपल आईटी और सो एंड सो फोर्थ. अब वो आइडिया को मार्केट कैसे लेके जाए? उसको पैसे भी मिल गए, ग्रांट भी मिल गया 20 लाख 50 लाख, समथिंग लाइक दैट, राइट? सो व्हाट इज मिसिंग इज the corporate ecosystem not trying to mingle with the innovation. So कुछ एक startups हैं जो निकल आते हैं if they have a good problem solution mind. So we are not copy pasting in R&D according to me. What we then do is जब ज्यादा फंडिंग चाहिए होती है, they will go to a venture capitalist. वो venture capitalist फंडिंग दे देगा, बोलेगा अच्छा ये मॉडल सिलिकॉन वैली में चला था. So for marketing, right? Options for marketing are very limited for consumer products. You have the same Meta Facebook platforms or you have Google performance marketing. तो सब लोग वहां पैसा खर्च कर लेते हैं, गूगल पे एड्स दे देते हैं, सब. That's copy paste, right? Some work, some don't work, right? But it is changing now where if people are working on a problem solution mindset, आप एक problem identify करिए. We are a large country with large problems, and हमारी अपनी market बहुत, it's a test bed. अगर हमारी कंट्री में कोई चीज चल गई, it is so easy to take it to the west because one portion of our country will be very similar to the west, right? Uber CEO came recently, I think 2 months ago, Mr. Dara Khosrowshahi, right? उन्होंने बोला इंडिया is such a tough market, लेकिन अगर इंडिया में सक्सेसफुल हो गए तो कहीं भी हो सकते हो, right? We are a tough market, no doubt about it. So I think next 5 years we will be doing very well in our innovation cycles. And अभी आप देखिए semiconductor factories बन रही है. Of course corporates are making those, but startups can avail of all those things. Quantum computing is a field we are at the forefront. And if you look at Silicon Valley, I mean, most of the CEOs of big tech are Indians only. They are a product of our IITs, right? Be it Satya Nadella or Sundar Pichai. Even consumer में आप Starbucks CEO देखिए, एक फार्मास्यूटिकल कंपनी, आई थिंक नोवार्टिस, उनका सीईओ, मतलब देयर ऑल ओवर. एडोबी का सीईओ इंडियन है, बैंकिंग वर्ल्ड बैंक सीईओ इज इंडियन. सो व्हाई डिड दैट हैपन? दे ऑल वेंट टू द वेस्ट, राइट? अभी क्या है कि यहाँ पर इतनी अपॉर्चुनिटीज हैं दैट दे डोंट नीड टू गो, दे कैन बिल्ड फ्रॉम हियर, राइट? And I mean, there is no favoritism happening from Silicon Valley. For Silicon Valley or other countries, India is a market, right? And they have realized that they need to be here, invest here, manufacture here, then they will get access to the market.
Agreed. I mean, we have talked a lot about West and how, I mean, quite a lot of things in India are influenced by the West. आपको क्या ये लगता है? The question would be actually कि the entire Indian startup ecosystem, whatever investments that are happening, be it VC or let's even take PE for that matter, private equity, इसमें कितना बड़ा chunk West से आता है? Are we still lacking way behind in the domestic capital that's going in the startup ecosystem?
हाँ, डेफिनेटली हम लोग लैक कर रहे हैं. लास्ट, मैं आपको फिगर दूं, पीक पे 21-22 में some 20 billion, 18-20 billion came in VC funding in startups, right, across the board. उसमें से 70% came from outside India. Okay. Ab last year, because of this funding winter or whatever, it's global also, because interest rates went up in the West. So a lot of money was not coming into. You see, what is VC money? VC money actually is not the venture capitalists' personal money. It comes from
Yeah.
larger investors known as limited partners, LPs, right? LPs invest here. Where do LPs get money? LPs get money from even larger funds, right? Hedge funds, pension funds, like the Ontario Pension, the Toronto Ontario Pension Fund, Norwegian Fund, Singapore Sovereign Wealth Fund. They give it to LPs, LPs give it to VCs. And because they get low interest rates, now interest rates have increased in 2-3 years, so they have not been giving that money. But last year, about 9.5 billion came into Indian startups, out of which again 7 billion came from outside India, right? So yes, a major chunk comes from outside India. But having said that, now Indian HNIs, family offices are looking at this asset class very seriously. And going forward, it will take time. I think it will take time, but it is increasing, right? Of course, not humongously. It is increasing because venture capitalists in India are trying to raise in India itself. And I know that from family offices, big, large family houses, right? Also, a lot of angel investment is coming in, which might seem small, कि कोई 10 लाख डाल रहा है, 50 लाख डाल रहा है as an angel, right? But if you look at an angel network, they are actually getting 90% of their funding from Indian angels, right? तो वो figures
Right.
धीरे धीरे बढ़ते जाएंगे, where it will take time. And large PE funds are also present in India now, but PE funds don't look at early stage or mid stage or even growth. They look at hyper growth stage and acquiring companies, right? So it is happening, and now it is happening because fundamentals are coming back, right? You need to conserve money, you need to look at unit economics, you need to be sustainable not from environment but the business, right? uh,
Business model.
and the days of high cash burn have gone, right? I mean, you cannot be burning cash to acquire customers all the time.
Agreed. So actually, that brings me to the larger debate between growth and sustainability. कि जो of course जो अभी हम आप कह रहे हो कि हम self course correction कर रहे हैं where we have moved towards sustainable startups who are talking more about profitability and all that stuff. Growth में issue ये था, majorly growth approach में issue ये था कि they were growing at any cost. They were expanding at any cost. They were burning a lot of money, which was termed as not sustainable, right? But इसमें क्या होता है कि again ये कहीं ना कहीं एक फाउंडर पे प्रेशर होता है कि टू ग्रो सो दैट दे कैन गिव एग्जिट टू देयर अर्ली इन्वेस्टर्स इवन वेंचर कैपिटल फंड्स नाउ इफ
Yeah.
दे शिफ्ट टू सस्टेनेबिलिटी राइट दैट पीरियड विद सॉर्ट ऑफ elongate ये लंबा पीरियड हो जाएगा एग्जिट का इन सब चीजों का इस पे
नहीं,
मतलब हाउ वुड यू बैलेंस हाउ वुड एन इन्वेस्टर वुड
हाँ हाँ,
बैलेंस
सो सी, लंबा पीरियड नहीं होता है एक्चुअली. इफ फ्रॉम
अच्छा
डे वन, हाँ, डे वन, एनी वीसी फंड इन इंडिया इज मैंडेटेड. इट्स अ 7-year फंड साइकिल, राइट? उस पे एक्सटेंशन लेके 10 year हो जाता है. जो बहुत सारे फंड्स अभी उस 10-year साइकिल के एंड पे आ गए हैं. दे हैव नॉट हैड एग्जिट, सो दे आर हैविंग अ लॉट ऑफ प्रेशर. हाउ डू दे रिटर्न मनी टू एलपीज एंड ऑल? बट एनी न्यू फंड स्टार्टिंग नाउ, राइट? Now, when a company, look at a startup, when they start on this high burn model from day one, उनको आदत पड़ जाती है, right? And it is very difficult for them to course correct, right? अब they cannot reduce their burn overnight or reduce their employees if they have thousands of employees, like a Byju's, for example. Now, Byju's started like that, right? I mean, they started very small, but when they went to growth stage, they started like that. They were hyper funded, and we know. I'm not going to get into details why, what happened, and who is responsible. Everybody was responsible for Byju's, investors included, right? So, like we have some companies, right? I mean, many people don't even know them, but we have a company which is 800 crore worth also. We have a company which is 500 crore worth also, and these are not paper valuations only. These are realistic values of the company, and it has taken 7-8 years for the founders to build that value. So अगर आप डे वन से यूनिट इकोनॉमिक्स पे कॉन्सेंट्रेट करते हैं, 10 रुपए की चीज है, 12-15 रुपए में बेचनी है, 4-5 रुपए बचाने हैं आपको, राइट? You can guess, you will burn money initially, you have to invest money, but at some point you have to stop burning capital. तो आप डे वन से या थोड़े टाइम के बाद उस स्टेज पे आ जाते हैं. सो इट्स वेरी इजी फॉर यू टू मेक मनी. You might not hyper grow, but the growth stage will come where systems processes can be copy pasted or extrapolated. So we are at that stage now, and VCs are appreciative of that. At least they know that these companies will not die down like many of the companies which has happened in 2 years, right? I don't even have a figure. They have been in hundreds, right? In America they have been in thousands. This model hyper growth is being questioned by Silicon Valley itself now, right? तो अगर सिलिकॉन वैली क्वेश्चन कर रही है तो वी आर much behind, and we will also follow that example. When you give too much funding, founders think everything is easy and they die of indigestion, right? अब ज्यादा खाना खा लोगे महीनों तक दिनों तक तो इंडाइजेशन होगी, राइट? मैं आपको एक एग्जांपल देता हूं जो मैं बहुत लोगों को देता हूं. फ्रांस में एक डेलिकेसी होती है, बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है ये. उसको फुआग्रा बोलते हैं, FOIEGRAS, तो प्रोनाउंसिएशन फुआग्रा, which comes from the livers of ducks and turkeys. वो लिवर से एक्सट्रैक्ट करते हैं लाइक कैवियर, राइट? अब वो इट्स बिकम अ रेयर थिंग. डक्स और गीज इतनी नहीं है वहां पर फार्म्स में, तो वो क्या करते हैं, उसका प्रोड्यूस बढ़ाने के लिए वो टर्की और डक को फोर्स फीड करते हैं, राइट? ताकि वो लिवर इनलार्ज हो जाए. आपको भी मैं खाना खिलाऊंगा, खुद खाऊंगा, हमारा लिवर इनलार्ज हो जाएगा, राइट? बट हमारे लिवर की कोई वैल्यू नहीं है, वो डक के लिवर की बहुत वैल्यू है. तो वो उसको फोर्स फीड करते हैं महीनों तक, सालों तक, ताकि लिवर इतना बड़ा हो जाए, और फिर वो एंड में लिवर को एक्सट्रैक्ट करके वो डेलिकेसी निकालते हैं. उसका रिजल्ट ये होता है कि वो डक जो है इतना खा खा के डिजीज्ड हो जाती है और मर जाती है. दे डाई, राइट? सो नाउ द एनालॉजी हियर इज द सेम विद स्टार्टअप्स. इफ यू फोर्स फीड कैपिटल to extract some little value, ultimately they die of indigestion, right? Which has happened. आप डंजो को देख लीजिए, और मुझे कोई शर्म नहीं है नाम लेने में, because these are publicly known stories, right? Dunzo, after 10 years of burning 3,500 crores, has no business model and no money to pay salaries, right? The investors of Dunzos are the who's who of the world: Google, Reliance now, and so and so, right? उनके पास सैलरी देने को पैसे नहीं है. Same with the Byju's, 22 billion has become 250 million or something, right? So you funding and money cannot solve everything. It destroys things. Slow and steady will work, and we don't need only 5 unicorns in India. We need 1,000 companies which are worth 1,000 crore each, right? Which is happening now. It has started to happen now, right? So now to your main question, it's a very delicate balance between sustainability and growth. The stages that I said, you cannot skip those stages. 0 to 1 तो सभी करते हैं, जहां वो आइडिएशन कर रहे हैं, MVP करते हैं, सब कुछ करते हैं. वो जो 1 to 5 जर्नी होती है, उसमें लोग सीधा स्किप करके 1 to 10 तक पहुंचना चाहते हैं, राइट? इट इज 1 to 5 and then 5 to 10, right? They skip that because they get funded, and they think हम पैसा बर्न करेंगे कस्टमर. And in India, what has proven is you cannot buy loyalty of customers by giving away money, right? मैं आज मैं नोट लेके बाहर सड़क पे खड़ा हो जाऊं, 100 रुपए के नोट, लाइन लग जाएगी 5 किलोमीटर की, right? And I can call it cost of customer acquisition, right? अब मैं एक हफ्ते के बाद मैं 50 रुपए का नोट लेके खड़ा हो जाऊं, फिर लाइन लग जाएगी. I can call it cost of customer retention, right? सबका डेटा भी मिल जाएगा. अब बड़े प्यार से सब लोग फोन नंबर भी दे देंगे और ईमेल भी दे देंगे, 50 रुपए फ्री में मिल रहे हैं. Why do I need to build a business and technology and blah blah blah, right? So now same thing you cannot do by burning money, right? अब ये स्विगी, जोमेटो, फ्लिपकार्ट, जितने भी ई-कॉमर्स कंपनीज हैं, राइट? आई मीन दे बर्न्ट मनी लाइक हेल, ताकि वो जो भारत का कस्टमर है वो खरीदने लग जाए सामान. वो नहीं खरीदेगा फिर भी, राइट? A customer in rural India, tier 3, tier 4 India, is very value conscious, right? They are not cheap, they are value conscious. उसको वो चीज को टच करना है, फील करना है, चाहे वो 500 रुपए 100 रुपए की चीज भी है. I go to my clients who are agricultural companies, we go to farms together, and that farmer is earning well. 20-25 हजार रुपए मिनिमम कमा रहा है वो फार्मर जो काम कर रहा है फील्ड पे. उसके पास लेटेस्ट मोबाइल फोन भी है, सब कुछ. बट यू कैन नॉट एक्सपेक्ट हिम कि वो 2 मिनट में एक इंस्टाग्राम एड देखकर चीज खरीद लेगा, राइट? दे वैल्यू देयर मनी. सो you cannot buy loyalty by throwing away money. You have to build it up slowly, right? So it's a very delicate balance. अगर founders को शुरू में समझ आ जाता है तो ठीक है, और अब समझ आ रहा है, because funding, the access to capital, and funding is not cheap anymore, right? I mean, you need to
Right.
convince the investor why you need money, and no investor is giving you money to just burn away, because investors themselves have burnt their fingers very badly.
Exactly.
Last point I'll make on this question is, all the investors, be it PE, VC, angel, they work on a Pareto model. Okay, the Pareto model is an 80-20 model where only 20% on average, कम भी होती है, right? कमी होती है usually. 20% of their investments give them 80% of their returns. So if they have 10 companies, for example, in their portfolio, only one or two will give them exponential returns. 4 of them will die down, 3-4 will give them 1x, 1.5x. But now, if they have 10 companies they've invested, they expect hyper growth from every company, right? Knowing that 5-6 will fail, right? So इस मॉडल में क्या है कि they do force investors to go on hyper growth, which they have done. एक दो उनको मिल जाते हैं outliers, like Zomato is an outlier, right? And जो भी public हुई हैं companies, right? Some of them, Swiggy is, but you have to look at Swiggy and Zomato. It has taken them 10-12 years to reach where they are, right? So you cannot expect growth really, not hyper growth. Now, Paytm का example ले लीजिए, and I have given so many media interviews, and I personally love Vijay Shekhar Sharma for his humility and what he has built from grassroots level, right? QR code लाने वाले वो हैं इंडिया में, grassroots level पे आज पेटीएम की हालत काफी खराब है, where we are not even using it, but default फिर भी यही है कि आप पेटीएम कर दीजिए पैसा, यूपीआई कोई नहीं बोलता है, it is a verb like Google कि आप पेटीएम कर दो.
It has become a verb.
Right, we might use Google Pay or Phone Pay or Cred or something, but आज तक मैं रोज टैक्सीज में जाता हूँ and something पेटीएम, मेरे घर के ड्राइवर, मेड्स इतने सालों से पेटीएम, अभी भी यही बोलते हैं. कल रात को बोला मेड ने, सर आप पेटीएम कर दीजिए, राइट? अब वो मैं पेटीएम नहीं करूंगा बिकॉज वो चल ही नहीं रहा बोथ साइड्स पे, राइट? सो बट व्हाट हैपेंड देयर, राइट? हाइपर ग्रोथ वेयर दे स्किप स्टेजेस in growing from a startup to a company to a public listed company, right? They had a lot of pressure from wherever, their early Chinese investors, Japanese investors, and so forth, right? So you cannot, and they have course corrected. He is very humble to, Mr. Sharma has been very humble to accept that mistakes were made, right? And it's a model where, again, it's a success also. Ab jo hua hai, those are regulatory challenges. They will get over it or not, God knows. But still, so hyper growth also depends on your sector and industry, by the way. Some
very much.
sectors, yeah, right. I mean, if you are a hardcore deep tech hardware company, you cannot have hyper growth. You cannot burn money, right? If you are a consumer brand, yes and no, but depends what category. If you are already competing with somebody or a market where there are 100 other players, right? आपके पैसे burn करने से कुछ नहीं होगा, right? Many of these D2C brands, they started with burning money, but they have all started reaching stagnation point, right? Where they know सिर्फ online e-commerce पे बेचने से, quick commerce पे बेचने से, Instagram पे बेचने से हम ceiling hit कर जाते हैं. Then they have to go omni channel, go to offline. 90% of commerce in India is still done offline, right? It will keep coming down, but offline will never stop in India. Or in the US also, supermarkets are there, all the shopping malls are still there. So, you know, there is a space for everybody, and one needs to look at data, which people did not look at, right? You have to go to where the customer is, not expect the customer to come to you.
Exactly. Most of the people are claiming कि phygital now is the way ahead. आपको physical और digital दोनों होना ही पड़ेगा.
उसमें भी बहुत लोग गलतियां कर रहे हैं. You see, a startup is used to technology interventions and all. They don't understand the physical space, right? तो उसमें भी गलतियां कर रहे हैं, but they will learn, right? They will learn slow and steady.
तो ये ग्रोथ और सस्टेनेबिलिटी वाली बात से तो मुझे ये समझ में आया कि ताली एक हाथ से जैसे नहीं बचती है. So we have sort of both the parties to the investors as well as the founders' expectations.
I'll give you another example, and it's not a sales thing. It's our customer called Two Brother Organic Farms, which sells a lot of organic food products. They have almost 250 products now. They started 8 years ago. They are deep farming company, right? They have farms in Maharashtra, Pune, outside Pune, right? Now, initially, the two brothers comes from the two brothers who started this company, Satyajit and Ajinkya Hange. Now,
Okay.
you see, in the initial days, so they did their farming, they grew whatever vegetables, crops, packaged, processed. Initial days, 7, 8 years ago, they started going to farmer markets in Bombay and in other cities, and they made these stalls and stood on these stalls to sell their products, right? Whether it was ghee or wheat and things like that. तो वो डे वन से एक्सपीरियंशियल पे आ गए, where the customers were looking at their products, see and feel and taste. Now the
Instant
same
feedback.
customer, and now the same customer again will not come there. If he's there, is okay. They will go to their website and buy, right? Because they've had the first experience, they know. They still continue to do that after 8 years, and they are a growth stage company. With I can't give the figure, but they are doing very well. They are exporting to 50 countries now, right? They went on a tour to the US 6 months ago. There also they went to 20 cities in the US and went to the customers in farmer markets, right? जहाँ stall लगा के उन्होंने, but they don't need to do it every day. So अब वो phygital अपने आप आ गया ना. The customer has an experience of the product in the physical store, and they are present everywhere. They are on e-commerce. They have their own channel. They are on quick commerce. They are in certain physical stores also across the country. So it's a, and nobody taught them. वो धीरे धीरे सीखे अपने आप, right? We have celebrity investors who have invested in that company. I can't name it publicly, right? So अब ठीक है, they have not become in 8 years a $1 billion company, which is okay. But next 5 years they will become, right? So
that's a certainty.
That's a certainty, and even if it doesn't happen, it makes them no difference, because they will not close down at least. अगर फंडिंग मिल गई तो अच्छी बात है, जो मिल रही है. अगर फंडिंग ना भी मिली तो ठीक है, ग्रोथ कुछ परसेंटेज कम हो जाएगी, बट इट्स ओके, राइट? They are building a company for the next 50 years, right? So वो 20 billion valuation, they and most of our clients, right? 20-30 billion valuation का पेपर पे कोई क्या करेगा, right? So we are creating real value, and that is very important for all founders who will listen to this also later on. Early stage founders especially, right? Focus on value creation, and you cannot skip steps. It is a minimum 5-year journey to reach somewhere, minimum, right?
आपको अभी भी ये लगता है कि देयर इज, मतलब आपने मेंशन किया कि द फंडिंग विंटर इज स्टिल देयर, स्प्रिंग नहीं आई अभी तक?
नहीं, सी वो अब एक टर्मिनोलॉजी आप कुछ भी डाल दो, बट व्हाट आई टोल्ड यू कि अच्छी कंपनीज को कोई कमी नहीं है फंडिंग की अभी, राइट? बट ऐसा नहीं है कि इन्वेस्टर्स जबरदस्ती पैसा डालेंगे कंपनीज में, 10 कंपनी सेम सेक्टर की पैसा डालेंगे वो. सो इफ यू हैव अ गुड कंपनी where you have built on fundamentals, or if it is absolutely new also, if you have built with a problem solution mindset. मैं अभी last week, I mean, right, just this whole week, 3 days I was at a function at IIT Bombay, which was a conference for all the innovation hubs in the country, 26 of them, 21 IITs and some other institutes. Each of them got 2-3 of their best startups, which are of across all stages, but essentially early stage, which have come from deep innovation, R&D, deep tech and all. And there was a pitch session where most of these 30-35 startups pitched to investors, right? And the response was fantastic, right? Of course, funding did not happen on the spot. It is not Shark Tank. Shark Tank में भी on the spot तो check shooting होती है, but funding तो 30% को ही मिलती है. So response was fantastic because they came with a lot of fundamentals in place. They are building with problem solution mindset. चाहे वो एग्रीकल्चर में है, चाहे वो वाटर में है, सस्टेनेबिलिटी में है, एयर पोल्यूशन में है, कॉमर्स में भी है. There was one company out of IIT Indore incubator which is already doing $4 million in revenue. It's a health tech AI, right? And they intend to do $12 million this year in revenue, valued at an $80 million, raising a $10 million fund now, जिसमें से 5 million commitment आ गई है उनके पास already, right? So funding winter कहाँ है? The 3-year-old startup raising 10 million at 80 million valuation, right? Because you see the founder is very grounded, वो कोई हवा में नहीं उड़ रहा है, वो रोज योर स्टोरी इकोनॉमिक टाइम्स पे नहीं आता है, एंड दे डोंट केयर अगर वो यूनिकॉर्न बने या ना बने, राइट? See, a lot of our startup media has been responsible for this. Whatever we have in this country, 3, 4 channels, hyping up these founders, making them celebrities, which was unnecessary, right? I don't want to name 10, 12 founders in this country are like virtual celebrities. They have not made 1 rupee in their life, right? All of them have burnt thousands of crores, but they give gyan to everybody, which is not feasible gyan, right? So, and I have no shame in saying this, that और ये टीवी पे आना, इंटरव्यूज देना, इकोनॉमिक टाइम फ्रंट पेज पे आना, this is not real business, right? I mean, you're just unnecessary hyping something, or our government saying, I have no problem with the government and the startup policy. Our government always quoting, we have 100 unicorns, 120. अभी आपने एक साल से देखा होगा कोई फिगर नहीं आ रहा, because वो 120 बहुत कम हो गए हम, right? Right? So unicorn, being a unicorn is not a metric, right? I mean, if it happens, it's good. आप जोहो को देख लीजिए, उसका रेवेन्यू यूनिकॉर्न जितना है, right? So Zoho is built over 25-30 years, and they never cared whether they will be a unicorn or whatever. आप Zerodha को देख लीजिए, there are such good founders, both the Kamath brothers. They have built something without even taking money from VCs, right? There is another company I know. Yeah. हाँ, business model क्या बोल रहे थे आप?
नहीं, वो business model पे भी it depends a lot, right?
हाँ, it depends on the sector. हाँ, it depends on the sector. But you see, some things in business are sector agnostic, which are fundamentals of doing a business. Right? Some things, very basic things होती हैं वो. This is nothing complicated, no jargon and no management strategy and all that. तो अगर आप day one से उस focus पे चलते हैं, you can do very well, right? Yes and no, right? I mean, अगर नहीं चला, also see India में क्या है, failure is looked down upon, right? So people keep making mistakes कि हम fail ना हो, they make a lot of mistakes. No founder starts a company with the intention of cheating or fudging books or closing down. Every founder is very sincere, सब अपना खून पसीना, but along the journey कुछ ऐसी चीजें हो जाती हैं which don't work out, and they fear कि if we fail तो अब क्या होगा, right? And they start making a lot of mistakes. We have stories, many stories, right? Go Mechanic है, Zilingo है, housing.com, and new startup of housing.com है, whatever broker network of Rahul Yadav. So mistakes they make, right? I mean, they're pushed to it. बाइजूस को ले लीजिए आप, राइट? अब वो इस ट्रेजेक्टरी पे पहुंच गए कि नीचे उतरना बहुत मुश्किल था उनके लिए, right? So they made mistakes, and we know the result of those mistakes.
Totally. So I mean, there are a lot of things, आपका न्यूज़लेटर भी है, right? Very good topics that you select and write upon. एक आर्टिकल में पढ़ रहा था, Indian startups navigating recovery and charting new paths, right? And I think a lot of stuff that things that we touched upon, the innovation and the overall Indian startup story is very well covered in that particular article. So I would actually, मैं अपने viewers को कहना चाहूंगा कि एक बार वो article जाके जरूर पढ़े. It paints a very good picture of.
Yeah. So I do put out a lot of information. I mean, thankfully I have a large following also on LinkedIn now.
You do.
But I am not an influencer or anything, in the sense that I am not doing all those things for making money out of it. I have businesses to run which make money, right? I just put out good pieces of information, and I will not call it content because I am not a content creator, right? So अगर वो किसी की मदद करता है तो बहुत अच्छी बात है. I write for myself to articulate my own thoughts, to put out information. I read so much every day. I read 50 newsletters and all that stuff globally, right? And I think it is very important for people to know about the fundamentals and basics and not get swayed by hype, right? ये hype अभी लोग कहते हैं, कुछ लोग हैं, I would name them, oh, it is the age of entrepreneurs. अब हम टीवी पे आते हैं, शार्क टैंक में आते हैं, या some news show on Amazon Prime called Startup तक. So it is good in a way, recognition, but it is not democratization, it is trivialization. अब क्या वो उसको प्राइम टाइम टीवी पे मसाला वसाला डाल के कंट्रोवर्सी करके. You see, entrepreneurship and business is not for TV audience, right? You don't see a Tata,
हाँ,
Birla, Ambani coming on TV every night and saying हमारी कंपनी कैसे चल रही है, राइट? उन्होंने कभी नहीं करा है ना. तो बिजनेस ही होता है. आप उसको फैंसी स्टार्टअप का नाम दे दीजिए, इट डजंट चेंज द वे यू आर सपोज टू रन अ बिजनेस, राइट? तो ये भी एक प्रॉब्लम हुई है. कुछ कल्चरली भी हमारे में प्रॉब्लम है कि वी लाइक टू आइडलाइज पीपल जो टीवी पे आ गए, सेलिब्रिटी बन गए, राइट? अब कल्चरली एक प्रॉब्लम है. अमेरिका में nobody cares if an Elon Musk is walking on the street, right? Or many other celebrities from Bollywood, मतलब from their Hollywood and all. ये इंडिया में एक कल्चरल थिंग है which will change. It doesn't need to come in business. We have enough politicians and film stars to be idealized, right? तो अभी वो सबको समझ आ गया है कि ये टीवी पे आने वाने से कुछ फर्क नहीं पड़ने वाला. Shark Tank itself has become I don't know, it's a marketing show, not a funding show, right? Right, only 20% deals are finalized. These sharks themselves, for some of them know me also, तो मैं किसी को कुछ बुरा नहीं बोल रहा हूँ. The sharks have become celebrities, not the founders, right?
right. हाँ, they,
Right. So it is a show for the sharks, not for the startups, right? So and startups actually, when they go on Shark Tank India, most of them immediately when their episode is aired, सबकी website crash हो जाती है because they don't have technology, because लाखों लोग एक time में click
traffic,
करते हैं. But does that eyeballs and traffic translate into sales? No, it does not. They cannot sustain it. 3 महीने 4 महीने तक थोड़ी बहुत सेल बढ़ जाएगी उनकी. So they need to go back to drawing board. अच्छी बात है टीवी पे आना वगैरह, रिकग्निशन मिल जाती है, अवार्ड मिल जाते हैं, बट go back to your, just work behind the scenes. Let the recognition, fame come automatically, right? उसमें टाइम लगता है. Right?
पर
There is
कुछ
no
तो
short.
मतलब कुछ तो अच्छी चीजें हुई होंगी ना शार्क टैंक के आने से भी.
हाँ नहीं, डेफिनेटली अच्छी चीजें शुरू में हुई थी. इट डज गिव यू रिकग्निशन. आई हैव, तभी मैंने बोला वो एक मार्केटिंग शो बन गया है वेयर इट विल गिव यू. फिर उसके बाद लेकिन फॉलो अप तो करना पड़ेगा ना आपको. अपनी
हाँ,
कंपनी अगर आपकी वेबसाइट, अगर एक तो शार्क टैंक पे सारे D2C ब्रांड्स ही आते हैं फॉर सम रीजन. वी डोंट सी एनी डीप टेक और इनोवेटिव कंपनीज कमिंग इन देयर, और साइंस kind of companies, right? उसका भी एक reason है, because they will not hyper grow. The Indian consumer is not concerned about air pollution and water pollution companies coming on Shark Tank. तो consumer companies आती हैं. अब वो आ गई. अब किसी के 5-6 हजार का ट्रैफिक है वेबसाइट पे, वो शार्क टैंक पे एयर होने से एक दिन में 1 लाख. एंड आई नो अ फ्यू फाउंडर फ्रेंड्स हु हैड दैट. बट दे, वो बैक एंड पे तो प्रोसेस सिस्टम सारे करने पड़ेंगे ना. उसको प्रोडक्ट से कंपनी को तो ठीक करना पड़ेगा. एंड फंडिंग विल नॉट हेल्प यू. अब आपको शार्क टैंक पे पैसे मिल गए और दूसरों से मिल गए, वो फंडिंग क्या कर लोगे आप? यू सी, यू कैन नॉट मेक अ बिल्डिंग just by putting money, right? You have to put cement and bricks and everything and build that building. It takes time, right? So property market, most of the developers are crorepati's. 10 दिन में तो बिल्डिंग नहीं बना सकते. It takes time, right? वो फाउंडेशन बहुत जरूरी है ना बिल्डिंग की, जो नींव बोलते हैं हिंदी में, राइट?
फंडामेंटल्स अगेन, फंडामेंटल्स
हाँ, तो
वन
अगर नहीं होगा, तो अगर फाउंडेशन नहीं होगी और आपने जल्दी जल्दी खड़ा कर दिया कुछ, इट विल कोलैप्स वन डे ना.
collapse. Definitely.
हाँ.
What role do you think VCs should actually play? Ideal role. एक तो VCs भी they vary from different
हाँ,
stages.
they
Like
come
micro
they
VC
come
होते हैं,
from, हाँ, yeah, different shapes
और
and
उनकी
sizes.
कैपेसिटी भी डिफरेंट होती है. बट is there any common thing that all VCs should ideally provide apart from capital to the startups that they are funding?
Support them. You see, support them in any way till the time they can be supported, and don't give them hyper growth things. So I know of a company which I won't name, and the VC also, which has been funded by a global VC. And if you believe me, every week that VC, the partner level, highest level, calls up the founders and checks with them how are they doing personally. कोई pressure तो नहीं हो रहा है, वो लोग ठीक ठाक हैं. On the business they take updates, and these are not professional updates, casual updates, right? And this is a very large VC managing 20-30 billion dollars in funding globally, right? So they do that, which is very unheard of in India, right? So what VCs can do, again, it depends. See, some VCs have come from an operator background, they were founders themselves or worked in corporate, right? Some just become VCs by being finance professionals. they come from banking industry, investment banking industry. So they're all shapes and sizes, right? Some VCs don't know much about running a business. That is why they are in the business of investing and not running, right? If they knew how to run a business perfectly, they would run it themselves, right? This is not a negative. Unka kaam hai, right? A bank gives you and me a loan because the bank doesn't want to run a business. They want to fund 100 businesses, right? तो वो भी एक बैंक की
Exactly.
तरह ही है. Some VCs come with an expertise, but उनमें भी क्या problem होती है? Then they start interfering on how the startup is run, right? अब the VC, if he thinks कि I know it everything, or वो, they keep interfering and all, which founders don't appreciate. So it has to be a very balanced equation, and your objective should be very clear. What do you actually want from your startup? And that objective, again, there is no simple formula, right? But be supportive. If you have funded, take your time, take 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. मैं कहता हूं आप ले लो पैसा देने में. But once you have made that decision, please be supportive of that company. Make a lot of industry connections for them, connect them to mentors, advisors, and do all these things. It's in your benefit, right? So we are working with currently a few VCs who have asked us to help them their portfolio companies in consulting and advisory, and so that they can get exits. Now, this is something that they cannot do or they don't want to do, right? So they have asked people like us, because we, all three partners are very senior, almost 30 years each in the industry, and we have made mistakes, right? I have made many mistakes in my life, 28 years now in professional space. So I am not Mr. Know It All. I only know things by my experience. And so I can tell a founder which mistakes not to make, right? And this cannot be taught with an MBA or in our IIMs, right? वहाँ बहुत bookish knowledge होती है, which रियल वर्ल्ड में अप्लाई नहीं होती है, राइट? एंड आई एम नॉट सेइंग कि एमबीए मत करिए, जरूर करिए आप अपनी एमबीए, आईआईटी भी जाइए, but when you start running a business, there is no playbook that you can copy, right? It all comes day to day with whatever you are doing. So take the help. Founders के लिए ये है, take the help of everybody. And फाउंडर्स को ये लगता है, कईयों को शर्म आती है उनको हेल्प मांगने में. कोई शर्म नहीं. अ फाउंडर ऑलवेज हैज टू बी शेमलेस, राइट? In asking for help, for funding, for everything. Be as shameless as possible. This is a quote from, I think, some big Silicon Valley. Steve Jobs actually made that comment. पता नहीं किसी मैंने वीडियो में देखा था. That founder should be shameless. Be absolutely shameless. In asking for help, you will be surprised the amount of help. Steve Jobs was 1920. He called up Mr. Packard of Hewlett Packard Company, right? Even younger, he was 16-year-old and he wanted some spare parts for some project he was doing. उसने डायरेक्टरी में नंबर ढूंढ के किसी तरह मिस्टर पैकर्ड को फोन कर दिया, and he was shocked. Mr. Packard answered the phone and shipped him the parts and also gave him a summer internship job at HP, right? So he's made this little talk many years later that people don't ask for help. If you ask for help, help will be given, right? There's no shame and in being Mr. Know It All कि मैं IIT से आया हूँ, मैं IIM से आया हूँ, मुझे सब पता है. No. In the real world, none of your pedigree matters.
That's that's some wisdom over there.
Yeah.
That's great. So I mean, we have come at the end of our podcast. तो मैं आपसे ये चाहूंगा कि let's close it with your views on the future outlook of the Indian startup ecosystem. कहाँ जा रहा है ये, कहाँ तक जा सकता है? बढ़ता ही रहेगा.
बढ़ता ही रहेगा, because see, India, as I told you when we began, the India growth story is very awesome. At this point, India growth story does not include startups. Startups are very tiny. They make a lot of noise, right? Because it caters to the youth. But अगर आप इंडिया ग्रोथ स्टोरी देखो, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर में जो हो रहा है कंट्री में, on very many sectors, एनर्जी में हो गया, इसमें हो गया, startups don't contribute anything to GDP. But going forward, a lot of innovation will come from startups, and the trajectory, because the India growth story is good, right? We will be growing at healthy 9 to 10% every year. No country in the world is growing at that rate. Of course, startups will grow at a much faster rate. They have to, right? So अभी भी 2-3 साल का period है where some consolidation will happen. We will not reach hyper growth stage. But I think next 10 years are a very good. अब कहाँ तक जा सकते हैं in terms of numbers, figures, very difficult for anybody to state. But I think we've gone through the nascent stage. Now is the growth stage of
Hmm.
the ecosystem itself.
Right. That's great. That's great, Amit. It was
Yeah.
really nice, striking a conversation with you. It was a very diverse conversation, I believe. काफी
I
सारी
think,
चीजों पे
yeah,
हमने
yeah. And what I like is that we had a conversation and not a one-way interview or a two-way interview, right?
yeah.
Which I like. I mean, we never planned to talk on these topics. It just came naturally, and
Yeah.
of course, I like that. So, thank you, Paritosh. Thank you for having me
Pleasure
here.
is all mine, sir.
Thank you.